So, for those of you who are not aware, last night there was rioting and looting literally across the street from the White House. It got so bad that Donald Trump, I believe, left. We don't really know where he is as of me recording this, but he left and he's hiding in a bunker somewhere. And footage from last night shows that they turned out the lights on the White House, which is, I think, maybe the first time that's happened in decades, from what I'm led to believe. And St. John's Episcopal Church across the street was attacked and at least partially burned. Now, I've heard conflicting reports about how bad the damage was. Some of the video I was seeing from last night made it look like it was really severe, but today they're claiming it wasn't that severe, so we'll see. Ultimately, though, it doesn't really matter how severe the damage was. The point is, you have this image of people rioting and looting literally across the street from the president's residence, literally like a block or two away from the Capitol building, from the very center of American government. For those of you who haven't been to Washington, D.C., that city is extremely militarized. There's people with like shotguns and assault rifles everywhere. It's extremely heavily policed, at least the downtown core. I know the greater D.C. area is like a complete like hellscape, but the actual downtown area is very heavily protected and militarized because of incidents like this. But you have these images of the police just standing there and watching as the core of the nation's capital is just gutted. And I don't know how widespread the devastation was, but once again, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that image of the people burning stuff across the street from the White House. The government completely incapable of doing anything, or, well, not incapable, but unwilling to do anything about it, and the president running away and going into hiding. And I think the thing you have to keep in mind about power, and Game of Thrones has a lot of really good speeches about this, while a great deal of power does lie in things like guns and money, in manpower and followers, that sort of thing, but an equal amount lies in terms of perception, how you're viewed, what your reputation is. Being perceived as strong is in many cases as good as being strong. And when you have a scenario in which you're freely allowing people to threaten your head of state and taking seemingly no action, that is a massive, massive loss of prestige. Like, can you picture any, like, decently ordered country having this happen? Can you imagine like rioters burning stuff across the street from the Kremlin or like across the street from Putin's official residence? Can you imagine that happening in like China? Well, they did try that in China, and the army came in and crushed them when they tried to pull that at Tiananmen Square. Can you picture that happening in like Japan or Iran? Or, well, we'll get to Iran in a minute. It's ironic that I use that as an example, but I feel like in most of these countries, the army would just shoot them, or it wouldn't even get to that because the secret police or like whoever would just have arrested the leaders ahead of time, or they would have otherwise been stopped before making it that far. But like I said, we have this image of the world's so-called hyperpower, the sole superpower, the strongest country the world's ever seen, and the president hiding in a bunker like a little bitch because a bunch of thugs wanted to burn and loot shit. Like, and the irony of this is, I don't know if anyone remembers that tweet where Bernie Sanders was giving a speech and some like black woman came up and kicked him off stage and like stole the mic. And Trump tweeted at him, "Poor Bernie, he can't defend his mic. How does he expect to defend America? Sad." Well, Mr. Trump, you can't defend your fucking residents. So how do we expect you to defend anything? Like, I guess the White House didn't get directly attacked, but once again, these are all kind of details. It would have been worse if it had been. But when you get to a point where the elites are not even like expressing self-preservation towards themselves, they're not even stopping the destruction of their property. I mean, I guess you could argue it's government property and it'll just be rebuilt. But this isn't like, I don't know, some like shitty like suburb in some like southern city where it's like the ghetto rioting. This is like downtown Washington, D.C. And the elites are just letting this shit happen. So immediately, the image that sprang to mind when I saw this happening, and that's what this image is on screen, is Ceausescu, the former dictator of Romania, in his last speech. So basically, everybody in Romania, we're just going to give a Cliff Note version of what happened. Basically, everybody in Romania hated Ceausescu, and there were riots, and he had violently put them down, which I guess is a point in his favor, because that's like more than what Trump's doing. But like, so all the, like, there's a massive just number of workers and just people in the Capitol who are like protesting against him, and he comes out and he gives this speech and he's like trying to rally the masses, and they just basically tell him to fuck off, and they just like literally surge forward and try to beat him to death. And it's just this image that you see, I think, in a lot of revolutions. Like we saw this during the Russian Revolution, during the French Revolution with like the Swiss Guards, in the Iranian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, the original one, not the communist one, the Republican Revolution, where you see the leader of the country just in the capital completely lost control of everything. If there is still an army or police force, in that case they might shoot a couple people and then give up and go over. But it's just an image that I immediately associate with the complete collapse of a regime. Although I guess the thing that makes this so much worse is this isn't like a mass. Well, it's not like a mass popular uprising in the same way. Like if we look at like Russia or Iran or something like that, I believe in the case of Iran, something like 10% of the population were directly involved with the with the Islamist revolution. In the case of China, you had the KMT, or I guess it might have been the forerunner to the KMT at the time. You had like an organized, like parallel, or I guess kind of opposition government. You had the Bolshevik Party. We don't even have any of that. We just have a bunch of just randoids rioting and burning shit. So, like, if they were to shoot them, it's not like the same thing would happen that happened in the other cases. Like the political situation is nowhere near as bad. I mean, the American government hasn't lost, although maybe after this they will have lost legitimacy to nearly the same extent that any of the examples I listed were. I think at this point, if Trump was to call in the army and kick them out of Washington, I think he could not only get away with it, but it would kind of reinforce his position. And that's just kind of how I view this. This is like the Ceausescu moment. Now, does this mean that the country is going to collapse or Trump's going to be removed from office? No. But the optics of this are really, really bad. It makes Trump look really weak, and it makes America look extremely weak. And I forget if it's an Arab proverb or if it was something Osama bin Laden said, but a falling camel attracts many knives. And if you get the impression that the US is weak and they're unwilling to do the basics to survive, if you're China or Russia or somebody else, this might be your time to make your move. Because these guys clearly don't know. Well, it's not even that they don't know what they're doing, it's that they're unwilling to do the most basic thing to preserve their society. So if that's who you're up against, why not take a shot? Why not do that aggressive foreign policy? They're not going to stop you. The president's hiding like a bitch in a bunker while the capital city burns.